Good morning and welcome to Frank's School. This is the 81st day of the 7th year, first video. I'm going on with trying to document this visit that I've had from the Hong Kongers. So it's continued. This is part of a September update, and eventually I'll explain to you what I'm actually updating anyway. But at the moment, let me just go on with the fact that there were these people here and we did these things. I may have to adjust that camera just a little bit. The darn cat wants to adjust it himself. I'll try. Locking a cameraman, that's always a little tricky. All right, I want to deal with the interpersonal relationships, which became very intense over the period of, it wasn't really quite a month, it was like 3.5 weeks. The one one of the first ones was this one here, between King and myself, Frank. And King especially I want to talk about here. He might be considered the main character of all of this. Of the four of us, there are the main characters, and there were a host of other characters involved, as I tried to explain. But he was the main character. This was his doing. King is 60 years old. He it doesn't look like he's 60 years old. He looks very healthy. He seems to be very healthy indeed for that. In a sense, you might say he's the hero of this event, but it was not a simple matter. When I met them at the bus, there began the process of King and myself getting to know each other. I did not know how good their English was going to be, any of the four of them really. And King, it turns out, well, he's a cataract surgeon, laser surgeon in Hong Kong. He has a clinic there. I knew he had studied in England to some extent, but I didn't know how much. He lived in London a total of, I believe it was 8 years. So clearly his English was going to be very good. He practiced as a general practitioner, as a doctor, for one of those years, and was studying, medical school. So his English clearly was very good. Now we went fairly quickly from being new acquaintances to actually becoming friends. Within a few days, I was thinking to myself, he is not simply an acquaintance or a visitor. He is becoming a friend. I have quite a bit of respect for him. Now, what he tried to do is really quite amazing. He came to here with expectations, and he wanted this much. I knew. We hadn't communicated that much online. He had offered to pay me. He'd asked me how much would it cost to have an experience like what he foresaw, and I told him I would not do this for pay. You might say I was not for hire, not for something like this. This was going to have to be a visit. Well, he wanted his boys to study English with me. That came out, and he had said it before. Also, I did not quite understand the extent to which he himself wanted to study English with me, but I came to eventually. Now, also to my surprise, that studying of English with me very much came down to sentence diagramming, of all things. Read Kellogg's sentence diagramming. That was so basic to an American education at a time. But I wouldn't be surprised if most of my viewers have never diagrammed sentences in that way, because it went out of style. I kept it, well, for my purposes. I believed in it. I thought it was good. I continued to teach it long past, I would say 20 years beyond its time, maybe even 30, because it was fading almost as soon as I began my teaching career. But that really was what started it all, in a sense, because King cares very much about the education of his children, perhaps too much. He wants them to have a good education. He wants to do well by them. And he found, and he said it again and again, it was so difficult to find good teachers. In Hong Kong, there were not good teachers. And everything, he felt, came down to finding the good teachers. I'm not as convinced of that, actually. I think so much has to do with intellectual curiosity on the part of the student, too. Although that is true, a good teacher can be inspiring. Well, he found that he had found a good teacher in me online. He discovered sentence diagramming in the American style and decided that it was it was good. It was the best. It was the simplest. It was the most direct, and it worked so well. He had tried to find a tutor in Hong Kong for his children who would teach them English, including sentence diagramming. However, the man he spoke to was from Australia, which was part of the former British Empire, and throughout the entire former British Empire, they know nothing about American sentence diagramming. They have a different system of their own, which serves some kind of purpose, I'm sure, but it is not fun. And the man's comment was that American sentence diagramming was rubbish. And that's what he ran into again and again. But then another woman, another teacher, Elizabeth O'Brien, he found her as well. She's online, and I put her down here because she's, I think I'm spelling her last name right, this might be an A. He found the two of us who were supportive of and enthusiastic about sentence diagramming, and so that's what he meant as much as anything by studying English. But I didn't know that for sure. I had to figure that out. Now, to diagram sentences, you have to also know your grammar. This is syntax, actually. This is not, what's the older word for it? I can't think of it. There's a better term for the one versus the other, but I call it grammar and syntax. This is syntax, how sentences are put together. But to understand that, you really have to also know grammar, what you do with words. So I knew that. Well, all right, back to King. So he wanted them to study English with me. He also wanted them to experience a farm. He said several times that his children were spoiled, at least his sons. And he has a daughter, Mary, who's 7, and I don't know as much about her, but he felt that they were spoiled, and he didn't. I don't think he wanted to. Well, in a way, he wanted them to experience life on a farm, partly for the hardship of it, to see that life wasn't so easy, to actually do some work and stuff. Toward which I had earlier read on my own. I had, having nothing to do with him. I'd read this book, Mao's Lost Children, which dealt with Mao Zedong and the way he had young children of Chinese children they were called sent down youth, and they were sent down to up to the mountains and down to the countryside to city kids, especially well-to-do city kids, sent out to the villages to learn what that was like and hopefully to be taught from the villagers. That was kind of a disaster, what Mao Zedong did. But I was reminded of that because in a sense I was seeing the same sort of a thing. Well, for their part, the animals, now that was part of the whole experience. To King, I'm trying to stick to King, he wanted his children to be around animals. And I thought, well, that's easy enough done. I can certainly do that. So those were his expectations coming into it. And maybe for the moment I'll stop and then go on to, me next, I guess. Bye for now.